this is the variable routings and bombs. And in general, variable routings and bombs, they are very complex to model, and they are very complex to plan and manage as well. And these guys are able to do that. I don't know if other companies are going to have native capabilities to be able to support these processes, and that's where OMP really shines.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you're joining for the first time, this is part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. We review one of the vendors or the solutions. And for today, we have one of the solutions from the supply chain community, and this is called OMP. So we are going to have a lot of fun discussing that. Before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intros. I am going to start with my quick intro. Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. On that note, Shrestha, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Hi, everybody. My name is Shrestha Das, and I'm part of the marketing team at Elevate IQ. And I'm super excited to be here today.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Shrestha. Always a pleasure to have you. And if you're in the audience and joining for the first time, make sure you guys post your questions and comments. We typically try to utilize them during our review. Super excited to review them. On that note, I'll start with the quick briefing. So this is part of our the whole supply chain suite structure that we have been reviewing. I think you have reviewed some of them. So overarchingly speaking, I'll touch on how we think of supply chain suite. There are many different perspectives. There are many different suites available. Not many people know the differences between those, and then how and where OMP is going to fit. So we are going to talk about all of that. So number one, there are many different suites that sort of touch this whole supply chain bucket. So number one is going to be your supply chain suite. Number two is your ERP suite. Number three is your analytics suite. And a lot of competitive solutions that we are going to review here with respect to OMP, they all are going to touch these three different suites in some shape or form. There might be other suites, but for the most part, these are probably the primary ones. There might be some of the engineering suite or maybe manufacturing suite. Those could be touching this as well, but for the most part, supply chain, ERP, and analytics are going to be the primary competitive solutions or the overlap that you are going to find from the lenses of OMP. So overarchingly speaking, again, the way we like to define supply chain suite is that it is probably going to have three different pillars. Number one is your planning. Number two is your execution, and number three is the real network. So when you look at some of the comprehensive suites, for example, let's say if you look at E2 Open, Blue Yonder, they are going to have a lot more capabilities bundled as part of the suite, and then you are going to have some of the best of breed capabilities. So for example, your OMP is your SNOP solution that would fall under that planning bucket in that supply chain suite bucket. So let's say if you want to utilize many different solutions from many different vendors and you are simply looking for SNOP, best of breed solution, in those cases OMP could be a great fit. Now how this compares with ERP. So ERP, some of the ERP vendors are going to have these capabilities as well. Sometimes they try to sell as if that is merged as part of ERP itself, but in other cases they are going to have a parallel suite that is going to be slightly more disjointed overall from the data correlation perspective. So So if that is going to be connected from the data model perspective, then that would not qualify as the supply chain suite. In general, the expectation is going to be that this is probably going to be a very different data model, because the kind of capabilities that you generally require for your SNOP is very, very, very different from your transactional use cases, from your transactional applications. Now, when you are going to compare this with some of the analytics suites, and those analytics suites, what they do is they are going to not only cover your SNOP, which is just your sales and operations from the supply chain perspective, but they are going to have other data sets as well. So their goal is to provide the connected planning, and connected planning is going to be from the references of your finance, HR, depending upon what your analytics workload is and how you want to perform your what if scenarios, depending upon how mature you are in your planning processes. In some companies, they might rely only on supply chain data. They might bring some other data sets as well. In general, that whole integration, the exchange, is not as hard, from the SNOP perspective. That's why the analytics suite, if you want to utilize this more in the best of breed fashion, that's probably okay. It's not such a bad idea, even if you are going to use this more in the siloed fashion. So overall, this is going to be comparable to some of the other SNOP best of breed solutions that we have reviewed, and those are going to be your RELX, probably tools group. Logility is probably going to be the biggest comparison, I would say. If you look at one-to-one capabilities, Logility is primarily an SNOP solution. They are not the complete suite, at least as of today. I don't know whether they are trying to get there, but they are trying to commercialize themselves as SNOP solution for retail as well as manufacturing. That's where your OMP is going to be relevant as well. In general, we saw with Logility that they targeted some of the complex verticals where you are going to have very complex product. In general, whether it is going to be either retail or manufacturing, their secret sauce and the pattern that they have is when you are going to have very complex inventory. So that was the secret sauce of Logility. With OMP, you are going to find a lot more depth from the manufacturing perspective, the depth that I have personally not seen with any other solutions. If you are going to find that depth, that is probably going to be there with either your Logility or Connexus probably going to be the second. Third is going to be Logility, where you are going to find such depth, in the kind of processes that these guys are able to do from the BOM complication perspective, from the manufacturing perspective. So we are going to review all of those capabilities in understanding, okay, where do these guys shine and what are their differentiators. So overall, I guess their focus has been on very, very, very specific industries, and they target chemicals, life sciences, metal, paper and packaging, and consumer goods. And these industries are very unique. If you draw parallels, with these industries, with the ERP players, then you are going to find players such as your Epicor, Cispro, your Advantev. They are probably going to be present in these verticals. Maybe ECI, just a little bit. They might be able to handle these verticals, and the reason for that is because, number one, these industries have very, 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 very complex inventory from the product perspective, meaning you are going to have a lot more attributes that you need to utilize throughout your processes, from your planning to your R&D to your product development to your production to your planning. Everywhere you have to utilize those product attributes. But product attributes is not where their differentiator is. Their differentiator is going to be, in more robust processes. When you are going to talk about cutting, bending optimization, now that is very, very, very thick manufacturing in general. So that is something that these guys are able to do that maybe Logility may not be able to do that. So that's the real differentiator for these guys. Now, when you look at some of the competing solutions, for example, let's say Oracle Gmentra, they, in my mind, when we reviewed them, they were very focused on retail. They might be able to do some manufacturing. I don't know if they are going to have as deep manufacturing capabilities, especially for these industries. And it could be a much heavier lift overall when you are going to require these capabilities. In general, Oracle Gmentra is a very enterprise product, so there is a possibility that they might have that, but do very careful review whether they have these capabilities or not, especially if you are going to be in these industries. Then you have Infor Nexus. Infor Nexus does really well in very complex manufacturing space. If you look at these industries, large majority of these industries are going to be aligned to their Infor M3 solution. They might position, let's say, Infor Sightline, maybe Infor LN for some of the industries, for example, let's say paper and packaging. But it's very rare. For the most part, I think for these industries, you are probably looking at Infor M3. Infor M3 does have very complex inventory in general, but again, I don't know if they are going to have all of those capabilities that you are going to find with OMP. And that's why if you look at these industries, you are going to find a lot more logos with OMP than any other competing solutions. But Infor Nexus is going to be close in general. Infor Nexus plus Infor M3 combination in competition with these guys. Then you have QAD. Now, QAD is a very interesting solution. QAD is probably going to be very close to these guys as well because they target very supply chain heavy industries. And a lot of these industries, when you look at life sciences, when you look at chemicals, when you look at CPG, all of these industries are very supply chain heavy. So you are definitely going to find QAD there, and QAD is probably going to have some of these capabilities. But in general, QAD is not necessarily designed for very complex manufacturing as the ERP solution. They do really well in supply chain heavy, industries, not necessarily in very complex manufacturing in general. So again, you might want to pay attention, especially if you are going to be in these industries. Now, Dassault Systems is a very interesting example as well, and this is the IQMS solution. You are going to find them in plastics, medical device. So that's where you are going to have a little overlap in your life sciences industry, paper and packaging, maybe consumer goods, maybe chemicals. So these are some of the industries where you are going to find a little overlap. So most likely they are going to have these capabilities as well. From their perspective, they have everything from the supply chain suite perspective plus ERP. But again, you need to do a little bit of digging in terms of the architecture that you might be seeking, whether you should consider them as part of your mix in these verticals. Then you have SAP IBP. So SAP IBP is going to have very similar capabilities as your Oracle Gmentra, but in general, they might not have as strong capabilities from the manufacturing perspective. So again, do a little bit of digging there. Logility is probably going to be the closest competition for these guys. So if you are reviewing either Logility or OMP, in general, you want to review both of them just because they are very, very, very close. E2Open is the whole supply chain suite. So again, if you're looking for suite, then E2Open might make sense. But if you're looking for the best of breed solution, then I don't know if E2Open is going to be able to sell. And even if they sell, whether that is going to work with your existing integrations that you might have, the ERP systems that you might have. One point that I would like to highlight here is that 90% of the enterprise software vendors are aligned with very specific technologies, integrations, and if somebody is going to have the competing offering, in general, the other vendors are probably not going to integrate with them, or they are going to make it hard to integrate with them. So anytime, whenever you are evaluating any sort of suites, you need to keep that in mind, that people or the other vendors might not be as friendly with E2Open just because they are carrying a competitive product in their portfolio. So that's where best of breed might be a better idea in those situations, especially if you are going with the vendors who might not have these capabilities. For example, let's say if you go for Microsoft is going to be friendly with a lot of different vendors because their business model is that they are trying to provide the flexibility. So for example, let's say if you go for Logility OMP, you are going to find a lot more Microsoft presence in their portfolio, and the reason for that is because Microsoft is not trying to compete with them. But let's say if you go to SAP, there might be a little resistance, even though you might find a lot more SAP footprint as well in OMP portfolio. So again, these are the things that you need to probably keep in mind when you are evaluating OMP. Blue Yonder is a very competing solution as your E2 Open, which is a kind of suite from the supply chain perspective. Connexus is going to be the closest comparison overall. From the OMP perspective, they have their network as well, so they are, I would say, partial suite. They are not going to be as comprehensive suite as your E2 Open Blue Yonder. They probably have maybe 55%, I guess, or maybe 60%, of the suite. But the other thing, then you are going to probably get best of breed, but they are probably going to be really close competition with your OMP. Anaplan is the analytics suite. So it's a very different architecture, very different design, very different strategy that they are pursuing. So depending upon whether you are trying to do that analytics 360, you are trying to bring all of your data sets together from the analytics and planning perspective. If that is your goal, then Anaplan may make sense. But if you're looking for best of breed, then you might want to go for either Logility, OMP. Connexus is probably going to fall in that best of breed bucket. Relics is your retail solution. They have some manufacturing capabilities, but they are not known for manufacturing. So if you are in retail, it might make sense. In these industries, there is going to be some retail footprint, but the inventory may be complex. So Relics may not have all of those capabilities. So be super careful there if you are including Relics as part of your evaluation. Now, Tools Group is also, I would say, very retail focused, very comparable to your Relics. It does really well in the SMB space, slightly smaller, I would say. Relics, Tools Group, they both are smaller compared to your OMP. OMP and Logility, they are going to be slightly bigger overall in terms of the size of the solution and the kind of workload that they have handled. So review that and keep that in mind. Now, O9 Solutions is a very enterprise solution as well. Right now they are probably SNOP, but O9 is probably going to be bigger than your OMP. For the most part, they are going to have much larger logos. They have handled much larger workloads. They are not as broad overall in terms of their capabilities on analytics as your Anaplan or E2 Open or Blue Yonder. So they would qualify as more of the SNOP player in general. So Connexus, O9, Logility, OMP, these four are probably going to be in the right bucket, but make sure you pay attention to the size as well, because again, O9 is a very big solution. Industries we have already touched. Now, again, I think these capabilities is where the secret sauce is for OMP, which is going to be your cutting, bending, optimization. One layer that might not be, clear right away, especially folks who might be from manufacturing. For example, let's say if they are looking at cutting, bending, optimization, in their head, they might be thinking that, what, this looks like nesting. And that's right as well. For the most part, whatever you are doing here is very close to nesting. Okay, but you need to understand, again, I'm going to bring two different points which will help you understand where these capabilities are going to be right fit versus where your nesting process is going to be right fit. So number one perspective is macro versus micro that I generally touch. So in this particular case, they are doing slightly more macro planning, even if they are able to go as micro as every 2 hours, every 1 hour. Some of these companies might be able to do that. But again, the perspective is very macro. The perspective is not, the very transactional, the way you would do your execution planning. Once the real planning is done, then you have to execute as well. So the intra-day planning, if you want to use that term, sometimes that might not be intraday, but you are looking at in transaction planning where you need to correlate with your transactions as they are happening at this instant second. So in general, your macro is going to be your either near real time or it's going to be very batch. Your transactional planning is going to be slightly more real time. So that's the real distinction that you have between your nesting versus what these guys are trying to do. The number two distinction is going to be the machine integration. Now, these people are going to argue that, you know what, I can integrate with machines as well. But they are not necessarily integrating with the real-time processes where you are making the real-time decision as you are cutting that sheet, you are bending. So whatever you are doing real-time, that's where your nesting process is going to be. But sometimes these algorithms might feed to your nesting software or ERP software, and they might be able to take the workflow from that point forward. So this is the real distinction between what these guys are doing. But again, these are very, very, very deep capabilities that you are not going to find with any other solutions. At least we have not seen. So again, if you care for these capabilities at the macro recommendation level, then this could be a great solution. Now, deep bombs with subcontractors, even with solutions as deep as SAP, sometimes the subcontractor functionality is generally weak because you are not going to have as much exposure in a lot of different manufacturing sectors. But for example, let's say if you are going to be in industries such as your paper and packaging, you are literally dealing with 12 different vendors, you are dealing with 12 different production steps, and each of them need to share the inventory. They need to do a little bit of processing, then they are going to send the product. So again, in these industries, it's very different ball game, and you are probably going to find that with your chemicals, life sciences, these industries as well. So when you have the processes with your subcontractors, your ERP is likely to be very different, your SNOP is likely to be very different, and that's where OMP really shines. You are probably not going to find these capabilities even with solutions as deep as Kinaxis or Logility, even though they might claim that they are very deep in manufacturing, etc. So this might be the point that you really want to hit on if you are going to be, in these industries. That's pretty much it. So I'm probably going to move to the next slide, unless we have any comments. I'm not seeing anything. All right, so I'll keep moving here. Now, this is coming from their press release, I believe so, or maybe from their marketing material. I think this is from their marketing material. So here, supply chains with lead sourcing, manufacturing, or distribution lead times triggering the need for reliable demand forecasting for up to more than a year. Forecasting is mixed MTS and MTO environments with significant quantities of customer-specific products. When you look at customer-specific products, in certain industries, especially if you are going to be in let's say the plastic extrusion space or paper or packaging industries, these are very heavily dependent upon customers. Each of those customers are going to have very specific requirements in terms of what they want to do. They are going to have their marketing drawings that they want to utilize. They are going to have their quality specifications that they want you to follow. So again, these industries are very complex in general from the process perspective, and these guys are able to plan for that. So again, these guys are very deep in these specific industries, whether you are going to have a lot of subcontracting processes, but you are also going to have a lot of customer collaboration processes. And then they are talking about the mix of MTS and MTO from the supply chain planning perspective. These are very different modes of manufacturing. In general, what we see when we look at the bombs and the inventory and the SKUs of different companies, in most cases they generally end up mixing these things because their inventory is evolved over the period of time. Their bombs, SKUs, they are evolved over the period of time. So generally they don't really have control on a real segmentation between MTS and MTO. So that's why they have a lot of problems in their supply chain planning. But MTS, MTO, these are very, very different, from supply chain planning perspective. Now we have industries with short average product life cycles and dynamic product life spans requiring robust PIPO management. And PIPO management is a very interesting term that I don't think we have seen with any of the other reviews that we have done. So, we have a little reference here for you. It's called plan, implement, produce, and then optimize. So again, they are covering the whole process from the PIPO management perspective, but these are going to be short average product life cycle. Generally, you are going to find this in the CPG space. You are going to find in industries where you are going to have short shelf life. That is going to be there in grocery, food, in chemical centric spaces. So you are going to find all of that. Now we have some more comments here. We have product attribute based environments. So this is the variable routings and BOMs. And in general, variable routings and BOMs, they are very complex to model and they are very complex to plan and manage as well. And these guys are able to do that. I don't know if other companies are going to have native capabilities to be able to support these processes. And that's where OMP really shines. Now, they also have complex manufacturing and distribution networks. Now that could mean a lot of different things. You are going to find this with solutions such as E2 Open as well, because they are able to do a lot more. Even InfoNexus is going to claim that they are able to do that, but sometimes they might not be as strong from the distribution perspective. These guys are able to handle both of those, but E2 Open should be able to handle far more than what your OMP is able to do. But again, that's probably going to be a suite as opposed to just the best of breed solution for SNOP. Then we have industries exposed to dynamics driven by both push and pull. And again, these are going to be very different processes. So if you have both of them, then you probably require some of these capabilities natively built. High demand volatility and seasonality. This is the layer that we saw with Logility as well. And I think they are probably going to be slightly deeper with these capabilities because the kind of industries that they are targeting, they are primarily focused on retail. So you are going to find a lot more solutions that are going to be much better at high demand volatility and seasonality. But when you combine the manufacturing layer with your seasonality, that's where you are probably going to find issues. And that's where, again, if you are in these industries, then you should be very carefully reviewing OMP solution. Then you have multiple competing constraints and KPIs. In general, when you look at constraints based manufacturing, when you're looking at constraints such as your shelf life, regulations, service levels, and inventory targets. Now, all of these layers are probably going to be there with most solutions. I remember seeing that with SAP IPP. Most of the other solutions are probably going to have this. But again, when you look at the more layers of constraints, and there are going to be some of the industry specific constraints, that's where I think these guys are going to be slightly deeper in general. Supply chains with constrained capacity, I would say that's probably a very similar point, that you're going to find with the other solution as well. I don't know if they have a real differentiator. So this is slightly more generalized messaging that you're going to find with the majority of the solutions that are going to have manufacturing capabilities. And there are only few that have real manufacturing capabilities, and that are going to be your Connexus of the world and Logility of the world. Industries facing make-buy sourcing challenges, and this is very common in these industries and in manufacturing. Even if they are doing relatively complex manufacturing, then they are probably going to be doing a lot of this. This you are going to see even with instrument manufacturing, equipment manufacturing, machinery manufacturing, industrial automation. All of those verticals, you are going to find this a lot as well. So again, they have these capabilities as well, but this might not be as complex. I think you should be able to implement this probably using custom fields. So even if this is not natively built, you might be okay, but sometimes there might be issues with the bulk updates, etc. So again, unless you start testing, you won't know whether you are going to run into challenges or not. And that's where you probably need to work with somebody, experts who might be able to forecast these issues for you during your selection process. Now, we have some more comments here. So this is also coming from their marketing material. And here they are saying manufacturing environments with multi-level pegging. And again, pegging is a term that is very used in the SAP ecosystem. There are other companies that have used pegging term, but not everybody uses that. But for the most part, this is going to be really aligning those components from the planning perspective when you have to move them together. Once you are going to be in very sophisticated planning models and scenarios, when you have outgrown, let's say, the smaller ERP systems or mid-market ERP systems, that's where you are going to probably need these capabilities. Initially, let's say if you're going to be, let's say, $50 million, $100 million, you're probably not going to require these capabilities. Even if you have as part of your ERP system, you are probably not going to use them because they require far more mature capabilities, from your process perspective, from your data perspective, as well as your team maturity perspective. So Again, you are going to find these capabilities in very enterprise grade products, or with the products that are designed for industries such as your chemicals, because there you have to plan these things together. Again, packaging is a very different industries, because you are dealing with a lot of different customer suppliers, so you need to do the planning together. That's why these industries are especially challenging, and that's why packing matters. So you are going to find these capabilities. For example, let's say solutions such as your Syspro. Epicor may have a little bit. I don't know how deep they are in that, so you might want to dig there. But for the most part, you're going to find these capabilities, with the solutions that are targeting these industries. Then you have the coupled routings, and that's a very interesting term as well that I don't think we have reviewed so far, but that could be a interlinking of routing. In general, the routings are linked, so I don't know if this is going to be really the scenario where you are you are scheduling two different operational steps together. That could be a possibility that we have seen with solutions such as your Infor Visual, because they are targeting industries such as metal, where you have to do this level of planning. Then you have your linked production steps, and this is very similar to your coupled routings as well. And these are all dependencies that you are going to have in your planning process once you are going to be mature with your planning. Long production chains in general, they have very, very, very different planning in general. So if you are in those spaces, then you probably need to look at the solution, and that's where OMP really shines. Capital intensive industries with multi-purpose installations designed to run at full capacity, and the way this is reading, this would be IFS's play in general. That's where they shine. So these guys are able to sort of play a role there. And my understanding is going to be that these guys are probably installed with Microsoft Dynamics FNO together as well, because IFS competes head to head with Microsoft Dynamics FNO in those industries. So most likely they are probably going to use OMP there. They have divergent filling, packaging, and transportation scheduling. Divergent filling is very interesting that you're going to find with packaging centric industries. If you're going to have packaging line in some of those industries, especially if you are CPG, you have bottling facility, etc., then you are going to find all of these capabilities that you're going to require, and they have very deep capabilities. Again, this is where the real strength is of the OMP solution. You are not going to find this with other solutions that are primarily targeting retail, but they are pretending that they have manufacturing capabilities. They are simply going to have a bunch of bombs, maybe a little bit of recipes, but this is where the rubber meets the road when you are going to talk about these capabilities. Environments facing complex changeover QA/QC cleaning time matters. And one of the things that we had noticed with Logility, that they had QA and QC processes as well. They had a little bit of PLM flavor, that we noticed there. So again, these guys most likely compete head to head, in general. But in these industries, these guys are probably going to be better fit. They are going to be slightly better fit for slightly more retail plus manufacturing centric industries, as opposed to very deep manufacturing industry where OMP is probably going to be a better fit. You have shifting bottlenecks, and that's a very interesting layer as well that you're going to find probably in automotive or any industries that are serving automotive. So for example, let's say if you are in the chemical industry, and one of the largest customers that they are going to have is probably going to be your automotive, so they are probably going to have these challenges as well. The same thing goes for any sort of plastics industry. Sometimes the packaging industries might be targeting automotive as well, so that's why they require these capabilities. One of the term that they have used is called campaign-based production. That is something that I don't think we have seen anywhere else, and I don't know how campaign-based production is going to differ from your batch production. But for the most part, when you look at the definition of campaign-based production, that reads very similar to your batch production. But in general, with batch production, you are probably going to have just one variable. This is literally that you are doing a lot of different segmenting, the way you would see, for example, let's say when you look at the campaign term, instantly you are going to think marketing automation, because in marketing automation you are using a lot of different campaigns. You are sort of segmenting your customer data, and based on different psychographic profiles, you are doing many different strategies. You are sort of measuring the results, and the same thing is probably applied here as well, but this is going to be more from the manufacturing perspective. So when you look at the data model for marketing automation, that's where you need much deeper capabilities overall from the layering perspective, perspective, from the segmentation perspective, the kind of attributes that you have to support, the kind of filters that you are going to need to be able to create these campaigns. So batch-based production, in my mind, is going to be very subset, very simplistic model, but your campaign-based production is going to be far, far, far richer model, in terms of trying many different scenarios. And maybe in these industries, they require these capabilities, but it's a very interesting capability that I don't think we have seen anywhere else. And they are talking about organized into distinct campaigns or batches. They have used the term batch, but again, in my mind, you have a lot more variables using which you are trying to design these campaigns, as opposed to utilizing just one variable that you would do with batch. Batch is a very fixed model in general. And they are talking about criteria such as your product type, customer orders, seasonal demand. So you have a lot going on there. Generally, batch is very, very, very fixed. Sometimes that's going to be based on quantity. That could be timely as well, but that's probably the extent of it when you look at the batch production processes built as part of your ERP systems. But if you are doing something like this, then you are probably going to require very, very, very specific SNOP capability. And I don't know what is going to be the output of this process. And if you would require these variables as part of your production as well, I doubt so, because these guys are able to utilize these variables, and they might be able to split whatever production orders that you need to generate. So you might not necessarily require these campaigns as part of your transactional processes, but you have flexibility to keep this inside your SNOP process. In my mind, that's probably the right place to do this. So if you have your campaign based production, then you should definitely look for these capabilities, and OMP is probably going to be one of the deepest fit there. And they are talking about the mixed production. You have the discrete project that is going to have a little bit of process capabilities as well. We see these challenges with the ERP systems too. So they are able to handle all of that. And then they are talking about have varying production requirements, demand fluctuates, and where there is a need to switch production lines frequently. That's that you are going to see with, let's say, automotive is big on that, where they need to switch the production line. Either the production line is down or the machine is down, something like that. You are going to see this with any companies that are going to be really busy on shop floors. So they are probably going to require these capabilities. But in general, those manufacturing facilities are not going to be as big on supply chain planning. They generally don't do any supply chain planning whatsoever, because the kind of products that they are selling, they are building just one product probably, that is going to take the whole year. So they are not as deep with your supply chain planning. But if you are going to have the varying production requirements, but you are also deep in supply chain planning, for example, let's say if you look for automotive, even though you have big cars, but they are still very big on supply chain planning. So for that, you would require these capabilities. So again, very interesting layer, and that's where OMP is really deep. Okay, so some more screenshots from their marketing material, and they are talking about reconcile demand forecast with actual sales orders using relevant business rules, demand signals to your planners. Again, this is slightly more boilerplate, I would say. This you are probably going to find with most of the SNOP solutions. So this is not where their true differentiator is in general. Now they are talking about material allocation. They are saying make optimal or rule-based combinations of materials and orders based on their attributes. Attributes is where the real play is that you're going to find with Logility. But again, the kind of capabilities that these guys have with the complicated manufacturing, that's where these guys really shine. And when you are going to have industries such as your metal, packaging, life sciences, that's where you have that whole subcontractor collaboration, vendor requirements, customer requirements, a lot of complications there overall from the product perspective. So these industries are very, 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 very different. Then you have things such as your ATP, CTP, and P2P rules, and profitable to promise. And I don't remember if we saw this with Logility, but PTP is a very interesting term that they are able to do. We have not seen companies able to do even ATP and CTP, because that requires far deeper data maturity, process maturity to be able to get there. And now if you are doing this across the systems, you are going to have multiple systems, and you are able to do profitable to promise, especially in your supply chain system, that's a big deal. Because here, if you have to do this, then you are literally bringing all of your costing data to be able to measure your profitability, and that could be a very heavy integration. In general, you're literally bringing pretty much everything that you have inside ERP. So it's very interesting. I don't know which is the right place to be able to do, whether you would do this more in SNOP or whether you would do this inside ERP. In general, they both are going to have very different role. So when you are doing, let's say, macro level planning, that would probably fall under your supply chain solution, and when you are doing micro planning, that should fall under your ERP, because they are going to have different data set, they are going to have different strength of their data, and they both have a role to play in general. So again, depending upon the process, depending upon what you are trying to accomplish, each of those systems are going to have different capabilities. Now, quota management is a very interesting, layer as well, that I don't think we have seen anywhere so far. And now this is slightly more into that trade promotions management, which we didn't see with these guys. I don't know how deep they are with trade promotions management, and the reason why they might not be as deep is because these guys are not necessarily targeting retail, so you're not going to have as much marketing flavor. They are far deeper in their production quality engineering capabilities. So this whole quota management is still going to be relevant, because that's how you're sort of planning the demand. So you are going to be doing this. So here they are saying apply smart business rules to secure product availability. So this is going to be your product based quota. Now this product based quota could be per customer as well, depending upon how you are planning, how you are producing, but the lenses are more from the production perspective. This is not your retail centric planning. Then they are talking about leverage autonomous promising based on predefined monthly or quarterly demand quotas. I would say this is probably going to be easier. I don't know if this is a real differentiator, because most of the systems will be able to do this. But when you look at the specific layers of customers, when you have to plan based on those product layers or product attributes, I think that's where these guys are going to be really strong in my mind. Then you have pegging, and they have highlighted pegging very clearly. So obviously they have native capabilities for this. And again, pegging you are going to find in systems such as your SAP. For the most part, they really talk about pegging. You are going to find with a lot of enterprise systems, because once you have outgrown mid-market systems, that's where you probably would utilize pegging. Otherwise, you are simply going to buy it. You are probably not going to utilize, because that requires very sophisticated data and process maturity. So here you are able to do pegging, as part of this, and they are defining it as optimized planning and allocation of batches and by the way, they also have a layer of batch. So this is not just pegging of bombs. The batch level pegging is going to be a very different capability that a lot of ERP systems may not have that. So that's where the real depth is. So by propagating demand and supply characteristics such as your expiration, certainty, and priority. Certainty, I absolutely love it. That is something that I have not seen anywhere. So now they are able to model that as well. And that's a big deal from the supply chain planning perspective. Okay, I'll keep going here. The safety stock management. Safety stock management is something that you are going to find with every single solution, where you are going to have some layers is going to be when you are planning this against lots. That's where the depth is, planning based on lots. And especially if you're going to have multiple layers of lots, multiple serial numbers against those lots, you are going to find these capabilities with your pharma medical device. And then when you are trying to design these decoupling points and trying to plan based on each of those decoupling points, that's where the strength is going to be from the OMP perspective. So they are going to be far deeper, but as such you are going to find these safety stock management capabilities with 90% of the SNOP solutions. Then they have slightly more technical layer here. They are talking about simulation and analytics, simulation of designed service levels. We saw a lot of service levels with SAP. And again, I don't know how many companies really use service levels, as part of their SNOP planning, unless you are going to be very enterprise company, then only you are probably going to have this. Sometimes these service levels are going to be internal, sometimes they could be external, depending upon how your processes are set up. But again, this is a very enterprise grade capability. Demand deviation, very common, that you're going to find pretty much everywhere. Lead time deviations, very common. I'm not seeing anything new there that we have not seen with the other solution. So the convergent and divergent networks, again, planning those could be very difficult as well. And these guys are able to do that. For the most part, you would require convergent and divergent network planning with most solutions if they are doing complex distribution. So I would think that most of the solutions are going to have, but when you are going to overlay those product attributes, that's where the real difference is going to be. Or when you are overlaying those complex production capabilities as part of that, that's where the real challenges are going to be. So that's where these guys are going to be slightly more strong. Now, cutting optimization, blending, routing generation, transportation, scheduling, these capabilities, I really doubt if you're going to find these ones anywhere. So that's where these guys are really strong. And if you're looking for that macro level planning where you don't necessarily need to integrate your machines, or if your machine is actually feeding your SNOP solution, that's a possibility. Okay, if you are using these data sets only for study, recommendation planning, then SNOP would make sense to be able to sort of connect with that, versus if you are using this for real-time feed where you have to make instant decisions based on this data, then you are probably looking for real-time connectivity with your machines. So these guys have very, very, very strong capabilities. And again, I don't think you are going to find this with any other manufacturing solutions. Maybe some of the ERP vendors may have that, maybe in 4, but it's going to be there. So pay attention to that. Transport planning is very interesting, that you are going to find pretty much with every single solution that you are going to review, because most of them have these capabilities. Yeah, blending is very similar to your cutting that we have already reviewed, so I'm going to skip that for now. Then we have some more comments related to cutting optimization. And here the overall notion that you have is the waste reduction. Sometimes you might be doing this for your sustainability metrics, depending upon whether you are being penalized or you are incentivized to follow those sustainability guidelines. But whatever your goals might be, this is where you are probably going to utilize those capabilities to be able to optimize. The routing generation, the only unique capabilities that we have seen with OMP is probably going to be your homologation. And this is the homologation, is the process of certifying that a product meets the regulatory standards. So again, these guys are very, very, very deep in those pharma chemicals spaces where you are going to have a lot more regulatory standards, and you need to create your plans based on those standards depending upon whatever is being enforced on you. We saw these capabilities with your Logility as well, but in my mind, they were light on the production centric capabilities. They were far stronger on the overall product centric capabilities with Logility. So again, review it carefully when you are doing that. They are saying the term is commonly used in various industries such as your automotive, telecommunications, pharmaceutical, and sports, to ensure that the products comply with safety, environmental, and technical standards set by regulatory bodies. And these are probably the industries where OMP is going to be really, really good fit. Now you have some of the continuous and fully batch production. You have semi-continuous production. Again, these guys are able to do a lot, and you have real challenges when you are going to have continuous production, when you have to plan based on that. A lot of ERP systems, they don't even have these capabilities, so you have to handle them from the inside your supply chain solution. You have intermediate stocking, that is very common, but sometimes that impacts your scheduling as well. So that could be a process that you need to design to be able to understand what is happening with your operations. Here you have the F&B industry, and that's where I have personally seen where you are going to have the intermediate stocking or intermediate scheduling. So semi-continuous manner is going to be where your pasteurization is probably going to be your a continuous process, followed by a lot of the steps that are not going to be as continuous. They are probably going to be slightly more static. The pasteurization is going to be very running liquid that is moving through pipe, and you don't have just one process where you are sort of following these steps. So that's where I have personally seen, and that's where these guys are going to be really, really good fit, because they are able to accommodate both of those. The same thing happens with pharmaceutical and chemicals as well. You're going to find very, very, very similar trends, very complex verticals. Now some more comments here. So here we are talking about demand pull challenge, and then they are talking about account fixed wheel flexible wheel policies. And again, fixed wheel is going to be slightly more static centric process. Flexible meaning you are sort of utilizing your real time inputs to be able to plan, and you are planning based on that, and that could get very complex in getting all of that data inside your system. Throttling decisions, co-product fractions. Co-product is a very complex layer in general. If you have to plan for that, you need to have native capabilities, or you are probably going to run into issues. The actual performance of catalyst installations, that could be a very interesting process as well. Optimize utilities consumption. Can you believe this? That's a huge problem. And if you have to optimize, you need to, and again, a lot of these capabilities, even MES vendors are probably going to argue that they have, but again, their perspective is very similar to your ERP, which is going to be, during your transaction, they are not necessarily doing planning. They are not good at planning. If you keep all of that data inside your MES, then you are keeping your data at many different places. That's where you need to draw the line between, okay, what is your data component, the analytics component, versus what is your transactional component, and who is going to feed what. That's where you need to make decision in terms of your design and architecture. Now you have some more challenges in these industries, which is going to be selling certain volumes on the spot market. Now these are very complex industries in general. You have very specialized tools that are designed for hedging commodity market, and these guys are able to accommodate all of those constraints as well for planning, and that gets very deep in general. Okay, so we have some more terms that they have used. For example, captive use. Captive use refers to a practice where a company produces or sources certain goods or services internally rather than purchasing them from the external suppliers. So again, this captive use, even though they have coined a term, but this is very common, with a lot of industries where they are trying to produce internally. They are not going to outsource everything, but captive use is a very interesting term, that we have, seen with this solution. Yeah, I don't think there's anything new here, so I'll keep moving. So we have one review, and this is a very interesting review. So this is coming from 2022. And the industry that we have is 3 billion to a $10 billion organization, which in my mind would be enterprise. They are manufacturing, so they are fairly large, sizable, function and supply chain. And then they are talking about joint team to deliver an integrated planning tool from high level forecasting to detailed scheduling. And they are able to do all of this, inside OMP. I believe them. There is a possibility that they might be able to do this because the kind of volume that you're going to have inside retail is very different. For manufacturing, even though you are going to have volume, but you might not have as much. Generally with retail, you are going to have the multiplication of your SKUs plus your locations plus your warehouse plus your retail shelves. So you have a lot more permutations and combinations. With manufacturing, you are not going to have as many, even though your data model is going to be complex. So again, different capabilities, different workload, different data model. These guys are going to be far deeper, and that's why they are able to handle such workload. And they are talking about solution can handle the complexity of our diverse operating frameworks, and they are most likely talking about different manufacturing modes, etc. And that's where the real complexity is. Not many solutions in the market can handle this. The planning areas was not always organic and had to be forced, causing some messes in data flows. Supply chain process knowledge could be improved to provide context on. So I don't have much there, so I'll keep moving. This is a very interesting review as well. This is from 2022. This is also a very sizable organization, so you might be able to notice a trend that it is used in very large organization. This is healthcare and biotech, and that is the right industry. If we look at the other one here, they had manufacturing, they had compared O9, SAP, and Kinaxis. So you might be able to see some layers here that they were compared with O9 and Kinaxis. SAP is going to have those capabilities as well, but SAP is going to be slightly more enterprise solution. Here, they have compared this with this is again very enterprise centric company. compared this with SAP. E2Open may have these capabilities, but they might be lighter, from the manufacturing perspective, from the pharma perspective, and that is probably the reason why these guys won in this particular industry. Blue Yonder is very retail focused. There's they might not have all of these capabilities. Connexus is probably the closest comparison here. They have compared, but they didn't win in this account either, just because again they might not have as deep capabilities, the kind of depth that these guys are going to have, especially for biotech. Era, Anaplan, and O9 solutions. Anaplan is a very different solution altogether. Unless they were looking for the complete analytics, Anaplan would require a lot more consulting to be able to enable these functionality on top of that. So they chose this. So now they are saying OMP solution is chosen end to end from demand planning via SNOP to OP to get full visibility globally within one system. So they are able to manage their entire global supply chain planning in one system. Can you believe this? Okay, that's a big strength compared to competitors. Only one, is on the same level. So number one, you are doing the global supply chain planning, and doing that global supply chain planning is a big deal. You don't necessarily need to do this inside your ERP. The macro level planning must be done inside your supply chain systems, SNOP systems. It's going to be much easier. You are going to have much superior data. You are going to have external data sets that you can bring in. So SNOP is probably better fit in this architecture. You can probably have siloed ERP depending upon what your goals are overall from the consolidation perspective. If you're collaborating with your entities globally in transaction, then probably you need to have ERP. But each of these architecture could be a great fit. But I do like keeping this inside your SNOP system, because that simplifies your ERP architecture in general. Now they are saying born within OPR, so super strong there, and exactly what we needed. Yeah, and they are saying that's going to be probably operational research. That's what they needed. So again, SNOP, they are going to be really deep in general. They are saying data model not optimal, fair, far too many clicks, which is definitely not user friendly. Again, when you are dealing with these complex industries, then you have to have those layers. So it's not optional. If companies may claim that they have slightly flatter data model, you would not be able to accomplish what you are able to accomplish here. So I think the gap here is really in the education of this person. Whoever has reviewed this, they might not be as deep in their data modeling capabilities. So again, this is a training issue, not necessarily the product issue. Logon to the system takes very long due to high load. Read versus write access not implemented yet. OMP should drive pharma innovation forum with all their big pharma customers to ensure full focus on key future standard innovation. And again, very interesting comment. They are expecting some sort of innovation from these guys, but they are not seeing that. Again, depending upon how many logos they have, what is their market share, what is their R&D budget, and that's where you're going to see all of this. So we'll go with one more review briefly, and then we'll probably wrap. So this one is coming from 2022. This is also very similar, vertical healthcare biotech, 30 billion plus, organization. So again, they are present very well in the pharma medical device space. So SAP Connexus Tools Group, Connexus is probably better fit, but I don't know how deep Connexus is going to be in the pharma space. So there is a possibility that these guys may have won because of those reasons. O9, again, I don't think they are going to have as deep capabilities. Blue Yonder, definitely not a fit. So here they are talking about the entire selection and implementation process was smooth and professional. OMP is a company that does not overpromise and also delivers on their promises. And the only reason why they are able to deliver this is because they have native capabilities. And that's a big deal, guys. These capabilities are very deep. They would require a lot more heavy lifting in terms of the data organization. So they are able to do all of that. Now they are talking about data planning system, excessive use of Excel, triggering insufficient forecast accuracy, in turn triggering excess inventory and lost sales. At the same time, I think this is the challenge that they were trying to describe, why they utilized a system like this. So that's going to be the right challenge. And if you have this challenge, then probably this system is going to be the right fit for you. So that's it for this review. And that's a wrap. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys are going to be here Next week, we are going to come back with another vendor or the solution. On that note, thanks everyone for tuning in today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.